Hi everybody, welcome to the QB School. I am JT O'Sullivan. Today we are talking shell coverage. What the hell is it? We are diving into it, locked in. Let's get it going. Welcome to the QB School. So the idea for this video really has been brewing for a few weeks. I remember, I want to say Troy Aikman as the first person on a broadcast I heard say shell coverage, and then he wouldn't let it go. And maybe it was Collinsworth or Romo at some point sprinkling it in as well. But then this past weekend, I randomly caught the Fox pregame show, and my man Howie Long started dropping shell coverage, and then Terry started to ask him what the hell it was, that he knew what it was, but his people didn't know who it was or what it was. And the whole thing feels just like a hot pile of garbage. And I want to pull it apart and just kind of try to explain not only what I think they think it is, but how I really think it's kind of a disservice to how we talk about ball defensive coverage, offenses that attack defensive coverages, and really does kind of a disservice to everybody listening. And so let's dive into it first here with how exactly we got here. So on Twitter, I come with the in-depth comment. Shell coverage. My man Billy hits me back. Terry's folks don't know what that is. I go, no one does. Too high is too high. Shell coverage could be and is every coverage. Every coverage has a shell. It's an LOL catch-all phrase that means nothing other than the fact that if you say it, you are saying more about yourself than you are describing any type of coverage. My man Billy gives me a couple compliments, and then we talk about love the courses, but my favorite might be beating every coverage course for this reason: getting a better understanding of all the coverages and what works against them. Billy, I appreciate the back and forth, trying to get through some of my craziness here as far as just the frustration sometimes that I'll hear through these broadcasts. But for me, it's such a catch-all kind of lump of nothing when you say shell coverage. Now, I think it's worth explaining. I have an idea of what I think they mean. They essentially mean two-ish safeties deep, soft coverage, usually zone coverage, usually middle field open coverage. I guess that's what they're supposed to mean when they say shell coverage. I think at some point a few weeks back, I actually went back and said, does anybody use the term shell coverage? And maybe a handful of people did, to kind of lump in kind of big categories of coverage. But just in the football world, anecdotally, my experience, no one prepares to beat shell coverage. No one runs shell coverage. Shell coverage could be kind of a big garbage trash can of all those types of coverages, but really it means nothing, because if you're going to run coverages, you're going to run different iterations of too high, of quarters, quarter, half, brackets, split field coverage, middle field open coverages. And if you're an offensive perspective, and you're trying to attack those coverages, you're attacking too high coverages different than you're attacking quarters, different than you're attacking brackets. And so when you lump all of them together, I don't think it does anybody any good. In addition, I know that they probably don't mean it, but every coverage has a shell, whether it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, two-man, brackets, prevent, they're all some iteration of usually different levels, that back level being the shell of the defense. And so for me, it's frustrating to sit there and be like, oh, well, we just need to beat shell coverage. Why can't these quarterbacks beat shell coverage? The defenses are catching up to these offenses. I think the numbers and the production shows that on many different levels. That being said, now offenses, how do we recalibrate how we attack, how we scheme, how we layer a game plan, how we call plays, how we structure an offense to be able to attack these types of different too high structures? And to me, there's a big difference between quarters, palms, cover 2, 0, brackets, quarter, half, split field coverage, middle field open coverage. And so each of those, as you diagnose, as you play against, you will attack those coverages differently. Now, we're not going to go into how we're going to attack every single one of those coverages in this video, although I do know a great course that goes into significant depth about those, and by far the best-selling course that the Quarterback School has, and I'll put a link in the video description. But realize they're not the same. They're not the same to the defensive play caller. They're not the same to the offensive play caller. They're not the same to the quarterback, to the perimeter unit, to the wide receivers. There's very little carryover that you can lump, hey, every middle field open coverage is the same, because there are even man and zone coverages in there. There are man match principles that would be different based on what the type of defense it is. So to say, hey, they're in shell coverage, you're literally saying nothing. You're almost saying it's almost embarrassing that we have to say we don't know what they're playing. They could be playing anything. They have some people deep and they have some people shallow. And for me, I think we, the people watching the game, deserve some sort of better hot takes, analysis, detail than saying, hey, they're in shell coverage. Because once I hear shell coverage, I think, oh my God, we don't know what we're talking about. Because no one in the game, in my experience, and if you're different, and if you play on a team or coach a team where you run shell coverage, I want to know. I legitimately want to know. I'm not being a jerk about it. Tell me in the comments and how you use and attack or run your shell coverage. Because to me, it's a lump of kind of hot garbage coupled together into what we have to listen to. And I think we deserve better as far as what we're actually watching. Because yeah, I know it's hard to watch the broadcast video and see exactly what's going on, the details of what's happening on the back end. But for the announcers, they're there. They can see what's happening on the back end. They can see the different techniques of the different levels and know, hey, is it some iteration of man? Are they trying to match these underneath coverage? Are they playing palms on the outside? Are they running too high? Are they running quarters? Are they running quarter, half? Is it a brackets team? And all those things matter. And they might not matter to every viewer. Some people might be like, oh, great, shell coverage. Now I know we'll run a check down. And maybe that's good enough. But for the people that kind of watch this channel and probably want more through their kind of announcers during the game, I think we can do better. I know I personally get frustrated as hell when I hear that shell coverage. And I don't know if it's just recency bias from me turning off mute recently and hearing them talk about shell coverage. But for me, I want more. I think we deserve more. If you run shell coverage, let me know. I don't think it necessarily exists. If you game plan to beat shell coverage, let me know. Other than the fact that you're going to throw checkdowns, I don't know what to tell you. But I'm fascinated by it. Hopefully you indulged in me kind of going off the rails here on this. But I really do think that it's worth kind of noting and not letting people get away with, hey, we're just going to lump everything together because we don't necessarily know the details, or we're not interested in communicating the difference of the details. And I think when there's a large enough group of people that want to know the details, that demand better information, I think we got to be able to kind of put it all together and be able to articulate and communicate what the differences are. Why are they doing this? What are the shells? What are they actually playing on defense? And how and why is that impacting the offense? And how is the offense then going to flip it and attack those different types of defense? Because again, shell defense is not a thing. You do not attack shell defense. You attack different iterations of middle field open or split field coverage. And all those things are different. Middle field open, you're attacking the middle of the field. What the rest of the shell looks like, is it quarters? Is it two? Is it quarter, half? Is it brackets? How are they playing the second level? Is it match? Is it zone, country zone? All those things matter. And so to get it twisted and say, shell coverage, here we go, another shell coverage Thursday night game, that's not fucking good enough. And we can be better.